Hey guys, welcome back to Unfilter'd, where we don't just dip our toes into history, we cannonball into the weird, catastrophic, and completely batshit moments that made this world this glorious shit show it is today. I'm your host, Midwest Mama, and this week we're diving into March. March isn't just about drunk people in shamrock hats or nerds geeking out over pie. March is a full-blown battlefield, a month of blizzards, backstabbing, and unexplained chaos that proves the universe is out here pulling pranks on all of us. If you've ever sensed that something's off this time of year, you're right. March is a glop jam mess, and we're here for it. Speaking of messes, let's talk about my journey into step-parenthood. I've only been on the scene with my stepdaughter for 8 months, but let me tell you, I'm pretty sure I've done more for her in that short time than her bio mom has in the last 4 fucking years. Yeah, you heard that right. 4 years of absolute trauma and or nothingness from the woman who gave birth to her. And I'm out here pulling the weight, making real progress, and being the stable force she desperately needed. We had court again on Monday, and my husband won full custody. To be honest, it felt like I had just yanked Excalibur from the freaking stone, man. After a brutal, soul-sucking battle with my husband's junky-ass baby mama in family court, we are finally in control. If you've ever had to fight an unstable bio parent whose life is basically a dumpster fire, you know this isn't co-parenting. This is all-out fucking war. Raising someone else's kid is a constant uphill battle, but I'm proud as hell of the progress my stepdaughter has made in just 8 months. She's come so far, and honestly, we both deserve a damn medal. March is the perfect reflection of that chaos, betrayals, breakdowns, and the kind of survival mode you kick into when you're just trying to make a better life for a kid who's been so let down by some of the people who should have been there for her. So to all you step parents out there, just know you're not alone. But while we relate heavily to this dumpster fire of a month, unfortunately, we'll have to wait until September for our actual day of recognition. Now, let's jump into this madness. This week in history. March has always been a breeding ground for chaos, and this week is proof. We've got groundbreaking inventions, iconic toy launches, and natural disasters that left cities looking like a post-apocalyptic wasteland. So buckle up, because history didn't come to play this week. It came to burn shit down. March 6th, Aspirin's birthday, and the day Ghana said, "We're out." March 6th, 1899. Bayer patents aspirin, finally giving humanity a socially acceptable way to cure their headaches, body aches, and existential dread. Before this, people had to gnaw on willow bark like medieval peasants, hoping their migraines would just give up. Aspirin wasn't just a painkiller, it became the go-to oh shit pill for everything from fevers to heart attacks, because nothing screams high-quality medicine like it fixes your headache, your inflammation, and also maybe prevents your untimely demise. Fast forward, and aspirin became a staple in every bathroom cabinet, purse, and sketchy gas station first aid kit. Over a century later, it's still being popped like Tic Tacs by people who refuse to see a doctor. Meanwhile, on the same day in 1957, Ghana looked at its colonial overlords, flipped them the bird, and became the first African nation to declare independence from British rule. This move set off a chain reaction across the continent, proving that sometimes enough is just enough. Aspirin for the pain, Ghana for the revolution. March 6th really said, we're done with this bullshit. Now, March 7th. The telephone was born, and so was never having peace again. March 7th, 1876. Alexander Graham Bell patented the telephone, and in doing so, permanently ruined silence forever. Before that, if someone wanted to bother you, they had to physically show up at your house like a psychopath. But after, they could just ring you up anytime, anywhere, and you were expected to answer. Imagine the first call, Bell and his assistant, Thomas Watson, screaming into the receiver like cavemen discovering fire. "Can you hear me? Holy shit, it works!" This should have been a blessing, but instead, it led to a world where we are now never off the grid. Scam calls, work emails, your mom asking if you got her text. Bell didn't just invent the phone, he invented obligation. What started as a revolutionary device for communication has evolved into an extension of our hands, a pocket-sized dictator that controls our entire existence. Thanks, Bell. You could have just left us alone. On March 8th, we had International Women's Day because, duh. March 8th is International Women's Day, aka the annual reminder that literally everything would have collapsed centuries ago without women holding it all together. And if you're a struggling wife and stepmom, you know what I mean. What started as a 1908 labor movement protest evolved into a global celebration of women smashing barriers, flipping off the patriarchy, and still getting paid less for the same damn job. Women have spent all of human history fighting for basic rights, and yet somehow people still have the nerve to say, why do we even need Women's Day? Oh, I don't know. Maybe because we're still debating whether women should have bodily autonomy, equal pay, or, I don't know, not be murdered just for existing. The fact that we still need this day tells you everything you need to know. So, shout out to the women keeping civilization and their households from spiraling into chaos. Because without us, society would look like a Mad Max dystopia real quick. March 9th, 1959, Barbie is unleashed upon the world, instantly becoming the most iconic doll to ever exist and the blueprint for decades of unrealistic beauty standard debates. Ruth Handler created her to show little girls they could be anything: a doctor, an astronaut, a CEO. And yet, the most common role? Perpetually perfect blonde with an accessory collection that could bankrupt a small country. Love her or hate her, Barbie owned our childhoods. She's been a fashion icon, a movie star, and even president, which is more than most of us can say. But let's be real, she also gave kids a wildly unattainable idea of the female body: tiny waist, endless legs, permanently arched feet. This woman is one bad fall away from snapping in half. Still, Mattel keeps cranking out versions to keep up with the times. Maybe one day we'll get Doomsday Prepper Barbie, complete with a bunker and a year's supply of canned beans. I could only hope. March 10th, 1862, America invents monopoly money, aka paper cash. The US government looks at all the heavy ass coins weighing down pockets and says, you know what? Let's just print some shit on paper and say it has value. Thus, the first official US paper money, the greenback, is born. These flimsy bills were created to finance the Civil War because apparently fighting your own country is expensive. Who knew? But let's be real, once they realized they could just print more, the floodgates were open. Fast forward, and our entire economy is now based on vibes and blind faith. Gold standard, gone. Cash, rarely. We've moved past physical money and now just tap phones together to make imaginary numbers change. We live in a world where a tweet can crash the stock market, and somehow this all just still works for now. Congratulations, America. Your money started as a war funding gimmick, and now it's just digital monopoly dollars controlled by billionaires. Hope you're enjoying that paycheck. March 11th, 1888. Snowpocalypse hits the East Coast. Mother Nature goes absolutely feral and dumps up to 55 inches of snow on the East Coast, turning New York into a frozen wasteland. This wasn't just a snowstorm, it was an apocalypse in a fluffy white disguise. Trains buried, roads gone, people literally tunneling through snowbanks just to get to their neighbor's house. It was so bad that cities finally realized, hey, maybe we shouldn't keep all our power lines and transportation above ground where the weather can murder them. This storm basically forced New York and other cities to move their utilities underground because no one wanted a repeat of people freezing to death in horse-drawn carriages. The Great Blizzard was proof that no matter how advanced we think we are, nature can always just yeet us back to the Stone Age in a matter of hours. March 12th, Coca-Cola's bottled revolution. A global addiction begins. Before March 12th, 1894, if you wanted a Coca-Cola, you had to haul yourself to a soda fountain like a commoner. But then Mississippi businessman Joseph Bindeharn had a brain blast. What if people could guzzle this sugar-fueled elixir anywhere, anytime? And just like that, the bottled Coke was born. The single move transformed Coca-Cola from a casual refreshment to a global corporate overlord. Soon, vending machines, convenience stores, and entire cultures revolved around it. It became more than a drink. It became an addiction. Wars were fought. Literally, there were World War II supply lines dedicated to Coke. Diets were ruined, and caffeine dependence skyrocketed. To this day, Coca-Cola's grip on humanity is unshakable. It's in every country except North Korea and Cuba, and if given the chance, it would probably colonize Mars. Bottling Coca-Cola wasn't just a business move, it was the birth of capitalist world domination in a glass bottle. So, March is named after Mars, the Roman god of war, and honestly, that tracks. The whole month is a battlefield, historically, politically, and meteorologically. Meteorologically. Wars have ignited, empires have crumbled, and Mother Nature has thrown some of her most psychotic tantrums in March. Fun fact: the Romans originally marked this as the first month of the year because nothing represents fresh start like launching an invasion. But it's not just war and betrayal making March a fever dream. Science has had its fair share of what the fuck moments too. This is the month where breakthroughs and blunders collide, where happy accidents rewrite reality, and when experiments cross the line from groundbreaking to deranged. We've seen brain hijacking frogs, meat showers from the heavens, and scientific firsts that left the world both smarter and significantly more confused. So as we march, yeah, I said it, through this cursed month, just remember history is a mess, science is a madhouse, and March is where it all thrives. If something unhinged happens, just shrug it off and say, it's March, of course. Now, let's dive into some of the most WTF moments in science that prove this month is the ultimate chaos generator. March 1965, scientists yeeted a squid into space. In March 1965, during the height of the US Soviet space race, a group of scientists looked at a squid and thought, you know what? Let's send this fucker into space. No, seriously. They launched a squid into the great unknown, supposedly to study its chromatophores, those funky little cells that let it change color. Officially, it was all about science. But let's be real for a second. Why the hell would anyone send a squid into space unless they knew something we don't? Fast forward to 2021, and NASA sends baby bobtail squids up to the ISS. The cover story? They're studying how microgravity messes with their immune systems and the bacteria they rely on. But hold up. Bacteria? You think that's the whole story? Of course not. In my opinion, the squid are aliens. If anything, NASA was probably looking for clues on how space might affect their true form. Here's the kicker, though. The squid's immune system's actually weakened in space. If they're really from some far-off galaxy, it kind of makes sense. Maybe they've just been pretending to be Earth creatures, and now they're waiting for their signal to go home. Maybe the bacteria is just their cover. Or maybe it's something even stranger. We don't know what they're really up to, but I'm telling you, those squid are not just here for a little science experiment. They're trying to reconnect with their true form or something. NASA's just like giving them a little push. So when NASA tells you it's all about studying bacteria, just remember, there's probably more going on here than they're letting on. 3rd, 1876, the Kentucky meat shower. It's a quiet day. You're standing outside, maybe sipping on some lemonade or something, watching your cows graze, whatever. And then it just starts raining meat. Yes, on March 3rd, 1876, people in Bath County, Kentucky, witnessed the unthinkable. A literal meat shower, where chunks of raw flesh rained down from the sky, some pieces as big as 6 inches in length. It covered a 100-yard area. Now, obviously, the first question here is, what in the actual fuck? The most logical, and I use that term loosely, explanation, a flock of turkey vultures, startled mid-flight, projectile vomited their last meal, which just so happened to be a disgusting assortment of meaty chunks. Vultures can do this as a defense mechanism, like empty their stomachs to lighten the load for a quick getaway, but a mass projectile vomit event over an entire farm, that's either the most terrifying defense mechanism in the animal kingdom or the weirdest freak accident involving vultures the world has ever seen. Either way, I don't think I'd be eating meat for a long time after that. March 26, 1973. Scientists turn frogs into cyborgs. You wake up one morning and you think, you know what would be fun today? Let's turn a frog into a cyborg. No? Well, Rodolfo Llanas, we'll put it on the screen, a neuroscientist in 1973, didn't have those same reservations as you and I. He hooked up electrodes to a dead frog's spinal cord and discovered that he could control the frog's movements. Without a brain. Yeah. So he managed to make the frog's legs move, despite the brain being completely absent from the equation. As unhinged as it sounds, this experiment was actually pivotal to understanding how electrical signals in the body control movement. It totally laid the groundwork for everything from prosthetic limbs to brain-machine interfaces that allow people to control computers with just their thoughts. So every time you see a robotic limb, just remember that a frog's body, completely stripped of its natural processes, was the guinea pig in the lab. If that doesn't get your respect for cyborg frogs up a few notches, I don't know what will. March 3rd, 1781, the discovery of Uranus. Yes, we are going there. In March 1781, astronomer William Herschel discovered a new planet, one that would go on to be the butt of science jokes for ages. Uranus. Now, imagine being the first person to discover a new planet and thinking, I'm going to name this thing something that'll make me sound important. So what did Herschel decide? Georgium Sidus, or George's star, after King George III. He wanted to name a planet after a king. Unsurprisingly, the scientific community was like, yeah, no. After some furious debate, they settled on Uranus, or Uranus. I'm not really sure. Sticking with the tradition of naming planets after Roman and Greek gods. Herschel, probably salty about the rejection, went back to his lab then and discovered infrared radiation. Suck it, scientists. So here we are today, stuck with a planet name that's been the butt of jokes for centuries. Even NASA can't get through a deep probe of Uranus without cracking a smile. March 23rd, 1961, a chimp was launched into space and immediately hated humanity. All right, now that we've talked about squids being yeeted into space and Uranus, let's turn our attention to something equally as messed up from NASA's let's send everything we can think of into space phase. Enter Enos the chimpanzee, an innocent soul who didn't ask for any of this. In fact, the only thing Enos probably wanted was to not be electrocuted. But of course, NASA had other plans. So in March of 1961, NASA decided to blast Enos into space as the first primate to orbit Earth. The mission seemed simple enough: orbit twice, do some science stuff, and return home in one piece. Yeah, sounds like a peaceful day at the office, right? But as you might guess, things didn't go according to plan. The spacecraft's computer malfunctioned, and instead of doing its job, it decided to shock Enos for absolutely no reason. But don't think Enos just sat there in shock. This little champ pushed through, completed his tasks like a total badass, and returned to Earth, only to do the one thing that made perfect sense. He flipped NASA the bird. That's right, after being electrocuted in space for absolutely no reason, he climbed out of the capsule and gave the scientists a solid middle finger. No welcome home party, no thank you, just a big old F you. Now, NASA didn't exactly advertise that part of the mission. Wouldn't want to make their little astronaut monkeys look too angry, right? But multiple sources have confirmed that Enos wasn't about to let this one slide. NASA might have sent him into space, but they sure as hell weren't getting a high five for it. Enos was ready to throw shade at the whole operation, and can you blame him? March 1994. Scientists brewed space beer, because why the fuck not? Look, we've already been talking about humans shooting animals into space like it's just another Tuesday. But what happens when you've done it all, landed on the moon, solved a bunch of world-ending space problems, and maybe even made a few interdimensional squid friends? You brew beer in space. Duh. Because at some point you gotta ask, what's next? And the answer is always beer. Always. In 1994, Russian cosmonauts were the first to grow barley aboard the Mir space station, just casually proving that space and beer could, in fact, coexist. Space barley. Sounds like the beginning of some wild brewing revolution, right? And it was. Budweiser saw the potential and jumped in with their own research into space barley. Not to be outdone, Japanese brewers at Sapporo took it a step further and created a space barley beer using barley grown in orbit. Yeah, barley grown in space. Someone's dreams were coming true, and they weren't done yet. NASA didn't just sit back and let other countries have all the fun. No. They jumped into the zero gravity fermentation game too. The catch? Zero gravity fermentation is an absolute nightmare. You can't have proper carbonation when there's no gravity to make those bubbles rise. So, flat beer in space? Talk about a buzzkill. But as we all know, there's no problem in this universe that can't be solved with enough research, trial, and error, especially when it's beer we're talking about. So here's the thing. Once they figure out how to make beer bubble in space, the first brewery on Mars is going to be lit. People will be lining up on Mars, Earth, and probably even a few squid-ruled planets to get a taste of that first intergalactic brew. And hopefully I'll be right there enjoying it. Because if there's one thing we can all agree on, beer is universal. And if anyone wants to send me beer from space, hell yeah, I'll drink to that. March 2018. Scientists created a human-sheep hybrid. Oh, the good old human animal hybrid. We've all seen science fiction movies, right? But in March 2018, scientists at Stanford University made it reality by creating a human sheep chimera. How? By injecting human stem cells into sheep embryos, creating a creature that was 15% sheep and 0.01% human. The goal? To grow human organs inside animals for transplants. But let's be real here. The official narrative might be, don't worry, we're not creating human sheep hybrids that walk around. But you know what science fiction taught us? Never trust the official narrative. Keep an eye on those secret government funded farm projects, especially the ones in the middle of nowhere. Who knows what's lurking behind those barn doors? Now, March isn't just a historical battlefield or a scientific fever dream. It's also home to some of the strangest, most unhinged holidays mankind has ever slapped on a calendar. Because why should this month settle for just being unpredictable when it can also be completely deranged? One minute we're talking about brain hijacking frogs and mystery meat showers, and the next we're celebrating a cookie that's older than sliced bread, an Italian plumber who can't stop kidnapping himself into danger, and an entire day dedicated to passive aggressively correcting people's grammar. If that doesn't sum up March's identity crisis, nothing will. So, as we continue tumbling through this absurd tornado of a month, let's take a moment to appreciate the weird holidays that somehow, against all odds, exist. Because if there's one thing March has taught us, it's that anything can be a holiday if you commit to it hard enough. March 6th, National Oreo Day, a day to honor the only cookie that has survived milk dunkings, sibling betrayals, and our late night existential crises. Born in 1912, the Oreo is older than sliced bread, and quite frankly, more important. Celebrate by double stuffing your face or picking a fight with someone who thinks Hydrox came first. Technically, they did, but nobody cares. March 7th, National Cereal Day, a day for breakfast legends, midnight snackers, and people who eat dry Fruit Loops straight from the box like emotionally unstable raccoons. Whether you love cereal or resent it for those childhood years of disappointment when you realized the prize inside was just a shitty plastic spoon, today is for you. March 8th, National Proofreading Day, a holiday for the grammar police, the passive aggressive email correctors, and that one friend who will die on the hill of the Oxford comma. If you've ever rage tweeted about your versus your, this is your Super Bowl. Celebrate by silently judging someone's grammar on Facebook or aggressively editing the bizarrely worded specials on a restaurant menu. March 9th, National Get the Fuck Over It Day. Created by a guy who couldn't move on from his ex, this holiday is now a free pass to tell people to stop whining. Got a coworker still mad about the office microwave incident of 2021? A friend who won't drop their beef with Karen from the PTA? Today's the day to hand them a Hallmark card that says, build a bridge, bitch. March 10th, Mario Day. Because MAR 10 looks like Mario. And apparently that's all it takes to get a holiday. Whether you celebrate by speed running through Super Mario Brothers or questioning why an Italian plumber is the most famous video game character of all time, this is your day. Just don't trust mushrooms. History has shown that they lead to both power-ups and hallucinations. March 11th, Worship of Tools Day. Yeah, this is a real thing. Whether it means appreciating your trusty hammer, your overpriced cordless drill, or just sarcastically saluting the human tools in your life, today is the day. Personally, I choose to honor every wrench, screwdriver, and idiot who has ever made my life harder than it needed to be. March 12th, National Plant a Flower Day. Finally, a wholesome day for pretending you have your life together by engaging in basic horticulture. Plant something, watch it thrive, and feel superior to everyone who can't even keep a succulent alive. Or, alternately, plant something invasive and watch your enemies suffer when their yard turns into a botanical hellscape. The choice is yours. Well, that's March for you. Chimps rebelling, frogs becoming cyborgs, squids in space, and space beer, like we're already in the future. What's next? Time-traveling toast? A pizza that delivers itself? At this point, I wouldn't even be surprised. If you're loving the madness, hit the subscribe, follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, and join the Unfiltered Chaos. Got some wild science stories or want to correct me on something? Drop a comment or share them on socials. Let's keep the weirdness rolling. Also, check out my Indiegogo campaign to make this madness even bigger and wilder. The link's in the description. March might end, but the weirdness never does. Stay tuned for more bizarre science, chaos, and the unexpected. Stay weird, stay curious, and stay unfiltered. Love you. Bye.